While I've been in the void, it's safe to say that this summer, Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown has been rather busy. We've got newsletters, beta tests, interviews, and most importantly, an alpha gameplay reveal. This is definitely the most news-rich period the game has ever had, and most of the news is really exciting. Obviously, there are still things that need to be ironed out, like ensuring a Lamborghini Huracan can't ramp cars like Grand Theft Auto. That aside though, it genuinely is looking really positive with so much effort into making the best experience possible. You have car functionality, pretty decent looking physics, the intricate map with so much to show off, including something I might have predicted, even the graphics. I mean, it's still a work in progress, but that's pretty bloody good. Alright, we've got so many things to talk about, and today I'm going to be a bit different and start with something that's still vital to any racing game, and that's of course sound. To some, sound design is boring, and in fairness, ironically, it's pretty hard to make it sound exciting. But a lot of a vehicle's personality in video games is often determined a lot by the auditory experience. It's a very powerful tool, and you can make people drive cars they otherwise wouldn't have been interested in, or on the other hand, make them not drive some of their favorite cars. That being said, Solar Crown is going all in. We'll be using the Alfa Romeo 8C, since that's really the only clean soundbite we have that's not disturbed by talking or music, and is publicly available if you want to check this out for yourself. So, beginning the comparison, this is what it sounds like in real life. And this is what it sounds like in-game. As far as video games go, it's pretty damn close. And you know what? Since so many people love comparing every single new racing game that's released to Forza Horizon, let's see what Horizon 5 sounds like. Yeah, that's kinda depressing when you compare it to, well, that. Genuinely, I never thought I'd see Kiloton do such a good job on sound design. While I've had plenty of fun in previous WRC titles, sound design was always a tad lackluster, at least when it came to engine notes. Recently though, KT released an interview with the associate lead sound designer for the game. Now, I won't bore you with a bunch of text, but there's some really crucial information. Firstly, they're not just using real-world recordings for their sounds, they're using YouTube videos in conjunction with them to research in comment sections what it is exactly people like about the car and the noise it makes. So some obvious examples could be the Hellcat supercharger line, or the Polo Intenta Emociones V12 HAL. Needless to say, Kiloton's aim for Solar Crown is to give every car a unique personality, and I believe that would suggest that every car has its own unique sound. Personally, I'm all for this because I really hate it when my Porsche Panamera sounds exactly like a Jeep Trailcat, and if you think that's a joke, yeah, it really isn't. Now going back to Solar Crown, as a small content creator, I can't exactly give you the best sound clips, so I embraced my British culture and stole them. Unlike Horizon, even though these cars are a bit more similar to each other, you can audibly hear the difference between them. Having a smaller car list does mean there will be fewer cars to drive than in Horizon, but I can safely say that they'll definitely be more satisfying. Another interesting thing that caught my eye in the interview is that they're in constant dialogue with some manufacturers as they iterate through versions of sound. I assume they can't say all manufacturers because some might be more snobbish, although when your car is in the game, I can't see why you wouldn't want it represented in its best state. Weird manufacturer things, I guess. That's pretty much everything that's useful to know from the interview, but I really couldn't skip over this last part. When asked what's the most proud sound they've produced for Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, their response was the Audi TT RS, which houses my favorite engine configuration, the inline 5. It was very interesting to hear they couldn't find a clean recording of the engine, which is fair, because it's a rare engine and it's only in 2 cars produced today. So instead of struggling, they utilized a V10, which I'm assuming is from the R8. I'm sure you've heard it many times that if you cut a V10 in half, you're left with an inline 5. And in the audio spectrum, they have a lot of similarities. So that's definitely a car I can't wait to drive. Although thinking about how well the car sounds have been recreated so far, I'm definitely going to need to start a V10 collection as well. Since we started on a topic that's a bit unconventional, how about one of Test Drive Unlimited's most iconic elements? Car functionality. Indicators, windows, and roof operation may sound useless in a racing game, but don't forget that Solar Crown's not just a racing game. Yeah, I get it. The whole driving game thing is definitely a fancy marketing term a lot of other games have started to use now. So, in order for me to not sound like a complete shill, think of what people do when they're playing older games. Need for Speed World lives on to being a competitive online arcade game, whereas Forza Horizon 1 brings back memories of when the franchise was actually not shit. So what do people do in Test Drive Unlimited then? Well, they drive. In all seriousness though, they do. Whether in TDU 1 or TDU 2, by themselves or in a group, I don't think I've seen a community interact like, hey, do you wanna go on a cruise right now? And actually just drive from place to place out of enjoyment rather than a side task to do between live service events. So the ability to put your indicators on, to tell people where you're going, or popping the roof down once rain has stopped were all nice features of TDU. That being said, Solar Crown is adding them all back in and expanding on them. Windscreen wipers, headlight control, and hazard lights are all something you can control. They even added a feature that the community requested, which is the ability to turn your engine on and off. That being said, there is a feature they didn't show off, which is the drive mode selection option. We still have this clip of the Lamborghini Huracan's button highlighted, which in real life lets the driver switch between comfort, sport and track, but I guess that's for a future newsletter then. Before we move on from the car features though, we can't forget about the radio. In Solar Crown, you'll have 6 radio stations with their own DJs, jingles and 10 hours of music each, which is definitely a bit of an upgrade over previous games. Speaking of an upgrade over previous games, let's talk about Solar Crown's physics. Now, I won't go too in depth on the matter, since in my personal opinion, there's only so much you can say about physics without needing to try them out for yourself. Most of the newsletter confirms the realistic and simcade nature that Solar Crown is aiming for, so expect somewhere between more realistic than Forza Horizon and dialed back from Assetto Corsa. One thing that caught my eye was to do with drifting. They say you shouldn't try drifting a car with a lot of traction because, well, it's going to grip. There is this misconception that drifting requires no grip, but you do actually need enough traction to pull you around the corner. So you actually do the corner rather than Minecraft Iceboat into the abyss.
Is that alright? What's that?
So while I can't believe I'm saying this for a Test Drive Unlimited game, drifting sounds like it could actually be rather fun and rewarding to pull off. Another thing they mention is that supercars can't really go off-road, which is really good news for anyone with a bit of maturity. However, they did say that even if your car isn't adapted to it, it won't go up in smoke. Now, don't get me wrong, I adored the announcer's remarks in Need for Speed Pro Street if you brought a silly car, like a Carrera GT, for a drifting event. But this is definitely more of a serious game. I know that means they'll be non-competitive, and they sort of want people to drive what they want. If you want to drive down a smooth gravel path in a supercar, sure, go ahead. But racing down off-road paths, I bet to see a Bugatti Chiron hit its front lip on an uneven bump and go careering off a cliff like the fat pig it is. Alright, now while that may be a fantasy of mine that never comes into being, the Ford F-150 from the showcase is equipped with asphalt slick tires, and you can see it slip and slide on the gravel, so while their words may be a tad contradicting, I do think they got the memo. With physics and sound out of the way, I think we've got to get onto the map. And I mean, the map. Here's a concept map I made ages ago, not only stitching together the map pieces shown off at TDU Connect, but also overlaying on it real-world Hong Kong Island from Google Maps. I never really got to finish it, but at least I get to show it off now. Although now that I'm thinking of it, I've got a bit of a conundrum. Some of you know a lot about the in-game map, and if all goes well in the YouTube algorithm, a fair bit of you don't. So instead of repeating the same information over several videos, let's make this a bit more fun. Here we have the Ferrari Scuderia 16M, one of the latest confirmed cars for Solar Crown. And this is the Tetsuo Hirano Tunnel in Oahu, which in-game is coincidentally the exact same length as the Aberdeen Tunnel in Solar Crown. I find it hilarious that people are saying weird things like there's nowhere you'll be able to reach your top speed except for the Wan Chai bypass. So my experiment is simple. On one hand, I'll hopefully educate people quickly on the map, and on the other, you'll get to see what a decade-and-a-half supercar can do on a stretch of Hong Kong's motorway. So here we go. Holding at 60 miles per hour until we hit the tunnel. 3, 2, 1, go. Released in 2006, Test Drive Unlimited shattered records with the 1-to-1 recreation of Oahu, Hawaii's main island, and 1-to-1 means 1 meter in game is 1 meter in real life. Today, Solar Crown is set on a 1-to-1 recreation of Hong Kong Island, a much smaller island that is more interesting to drive on and look at. It features over 600 kilometers of road, which is over 3 times more what Horizon 5 has. The island is filled with over 22 enterable buildings, including car dealerships, workshops, clan headquarters, an entire hotel, and quite a lot more. And that's time. Remember how I said the Ferrari was 15 years old? Well, it still managed to get to 200 miles per, or 320 kilometers an hour if you're a civilized person. Also bear in mind that I was speed limiting myself before entering the tunnel, so I hope that puts into perspective the sheer amount of speed that could be had on Hong Kong Island. Granted, we don't know the entire car list yet, but assuming the Koenigsegg Agera is the RS model, that's potentially 278 miles an hour that could be had, and that's also not including the fact Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown is including workshops to modify and upgrade your cars. Considering how the sense of speed looks right now, and even at the 200 mark, Solar Crown looks scary enough, I think it's safe to say that if somehow the rest of the map doesn't let you get close, there are definitely 2 places you might want to try out. As I said there in my little rap, there are genuinely 2 enterable buildings that you can walk around in. There actually may be more, but I've gone off the information on my map or what KT have officially said. There are 5 workshops on the map, mainly around the northern urban areas, with one near the Ferrari in Repulse Bay. That's where you and up to 7 others can upgrade and customize your car in both a performance and visual way. So it's not a terrible location for a car meet if you want to walk around each other's cars. Next, there are 14 dealerships across the map, 2 German, 2 British, 2 American, 2 Classic, 1 Luxury, 1 Off-Road, 1 Italian, 1 Ferrari, 1 Lamborghini, and 1 unknown dealership. Unless Kiloton didn't have it on the map at the time, that means it's most likely down in the area that's still on Google Maps. There are 2 possibilities as to what it could be, either a French dealership since we have an Alpine A110, although my guess would be an Asian dealership since we now have both the Nissan 370Z and the Nissan GT-R as confirmed cars. On second thought, that might be called the Japanese dealership because they don't seem to be grouping countries by continent based on other dealerships. We'll come back to dealerships in a bit though, since there's 3 other buildings that I want to talk about. Firstly, the clan headquarters, and before I start, whoever wrote this article last year, I hate you. It says here that the street's HQ is located in the industrial district of Wan Chai. Now Wan Chai is located here, and the street's HQ includes a nightclub, or rather is a nightclub. Wan Chai is specifically known for its exciting neon-filled nightlife, so when it said it's an industrial district, I thought it was a bit of a mistake. Turns out, it was indeed a mistake. The mistake was putting the 2 words around the wrong way. Kind of a shame honestly, but if you look at where the shop's HQ is geographically, I assume they wanted to put some distance between the 2, and this was always its intended location. That being said, I tried my best to pinpoint where this was, but it seems to be a fictional building, as buildings in the area it should be in are all high-rise buildings. Meanwhile, the street HQ is more of a warehouse with a slanted roof. While the exterior might not be that great or stylish, its interior is the polar opposite. Inside is a nightclub with a dance floor, a bar area, and an upstairs viewing platform, which I assume is where the VIP area is, because the sign totally doesn't give it away. But honestly, the neon-themed environment does look like a prettier and more modern version of Grand Theft Auto 5's nightclubs, which I think a lot of people made the connection on. On the other side of the island is the Sharps HQ, and it's actually based on a real-world shopping center called the Westwood. It's definitely been changed from its real-world counterpart, since I'm guessing the 6 residential apartment blocks on top of a shopping center doesn't exactly sound amazing for an elderly clan. Surprisingly, in the VIP area there's a pool instead of a lawn bowling pitch, although in its current state it's fenced off, so I'm hoping that's something you can actually enter later on. All jokes aside though, I do quite like the Sharps HQ, and it feels like the most complete in its current state. Personally, if I were to add anything to either, the Sharps HQ does feel a bit empty, and I get that it's more of a chill HQ, but that doesn't mean it has to all be seating area. Perhaps a piano or maybe even a small stage might be beneficial to add to the ambience, as they did add music on top at TDU Connect.
The streets winning. You haven't mentioned that yet.
Unless there may be rare occasions. But
bit of a common occurrence, I think, actually.
So it could provide a similar effect. For the streets, I wish there would be more of a divide between the bar and the dance floor for a place to sit down and socialize. That being said, I really hope that you can sit down in both these areas, since if they want it to be a genuine break from racing, there's nothing better than sitting down and relaxing with a bunch of your friends. Speaking of which then, that leads us onto the final building, the Solar Hotel. To quickly summarize, the Solar Hotel is your house in TDUSC. As you progress through the game, you unlock better and more luxurious hotel suites until you get to the penthouse. In these hotel suites, you'll be able to genuinely kick back and relax, change your outfit, monitor your progress, look at upcoming events, and even look at the weather forecast. It's not been mentioned yet, but I hope this is yet another area you can invite people to, because sure, there might not be anything to do with cars here, but it would be another nice area to socialize in a small group. That being said though, the lobby of the Solar Hotel is where you can socialize with other players, purchase new clothes, get cosmetic surgery, a haircut, or admire the 4 player cars being showcased for various metrics of that day. Now, the topic of TDUSC not having houses throughout the map is certainly a wild one. Personally, I'm fine with the hotel. It's a bit different, but having houses isn't at the top of my list of desires. One that is though would be a physical garage. Sure, we can use workshops as makeshift garages, but it would be nice to have a place to admire our own cars. That being said, there's an enter garage button at clan HQs and the hotel. So it is possible they simply haven't shown them off yet, and I doubt they're not listening to the community after adding the engine start-stop feature, so here's to hoping they model them in. There are a few buildings around the map which you can't enter on foot, but you can drive to. In the area of the map revealed, you can see roughly 12 petrol stations. That's where you can go if your car is damaged or dirty to clean it back up. There's also a couple of P signs on the minimap during TDU Connect, suggesting that there's dedicated areas for parking your cars or mucking around in. Finally, while not necessarily being buildings, I think it's necessary to mention wrecked cars that you can find around the map. Sure, there's other collectibles, but these are the most meaningful, as if you find all the parts, you can get yourself a pretty cool free car. Real World Hong Kong does actually have quite a few abandoned exotic cars, so KT do have the freedom of going ham without it feeling too video game-like. Before we move away from talking about the map, I do want to mention that KT did say they were altering some roads to make them nicer to drive on for all types of cars, and it definitely shows. They haven't gone to Forza Horizon 5 levels of boring road design, but simple things like smoothing out Victoria Road to being one continuous smooth curve will definitely be a nice thing if you're racing around the border of the island. I went in depth about the map in a previous video, so I'll only talk about the new things I found. The first is that it's probably known by now that the Lamborghini and Ferrari dealerships are in their real world locations. What people might not have picked up on though is that the other dealership locations do actually have some sense to them. For example, the 2 classic dealerships in-game are actually next to a classic car specialist in real life. And the German in Chai 1 is basically the giant Mercedes dealership there too. They've definitely done their research on the map, and it totally shows. Speaking of which, in a previous video I mentioned a driving school in real life which used to have a test area, and it seems that Kiloton have noticed this area as well. Most likely not because of me, even though I'd still love to take the credit. But now we have a pretty neat second racetrack, which now makes me want a rallycross track with multiple surfaces even more. I mean, it's not like we don't have the cars for it. Which leads me on to cars and dealerships. This summer, we saw 21 more cars getting added to the confirmed car list, with the sound designer talking about the Audi TT RS, which we've only seen as a traffic car. I reckon licensed traffic cars and dealership icon cars are all fair game to include. That being said, there are 6 new cars for dealership icons, which are the McLaren MP4 12C, the Caterham Superlight R500, the Chevrolet Camaro ZL11LE, the first gen 4GT, what I'm assuming is an Alpine A110, which is not to be confused with the Alpine A110, and finally the Abarth 500. Now via the cruiser trailer, we can see the Abarth 500 with a bunch of other cars, which, going left to right, are aptly named overrated, okay, underrated, boring shitbox, actual shitbox, and sex on wheels. Solacran has elevated the dealership interiors to match the rest of the ultra-modern theme of the game, and it definitely shows. Here it functions exactly the same as previous games though, giving you information about each car and speccing it to your liking, with manufacturer paints, wheels and interior colours to pick from. Of course, don't forget to make sure you test drive the car before spending your hard-earned money on it, hence the name. I think what puzzles me the most about the Italian dealership is probably the fact that the Lancia Stratos is in it. I'm wondering why it's not in one of the classic dealerships or even the off-road dealership. Without Lancia, the Italian dealership seems to only have 4 cars, and in my opinion it totally could have been made into a European dealership for French cars like the Alpine A110. My guess as to why they have not done that is probably because they have more cars to add, either at launch or post-launch. We saw 6 more player cars at TDU Connect being driven. Firstly, Alex driving the Chevrolet Corvette ZR1 Targa, meaning it's one more car with a removable roof. TDU's associate producer driving a Porsche Taycan S Cross Turismo, which is the quote-unquote off-road estate Taycan. Theo or Black Panther driving a Nissan GTR, meaning we have a whopping 2 Asian cars, so you can break that champagne out. And finally, the AI driving a Dodge Challenger SRT Hellcat widebody and a Bugatti Chiron Sport 110 Ans or Anniversary. I'm not sure if that's the same Chiron we saw in 2020, so I've decided to add it as a new car. And while they weren't driving, in the hotel, we saw a Lotus Evora GT430 Sport on the AR panel and the Alpine A110 in the lobby. License text revealed the addition of Hummer as a brand without any model names, and the text Corvette Stingray, which we haven't seen a Stingray Corvette yet. Alex's interviews unveiled the Ferrari Scuderia Spider 16M and the Ferrari LaFerrari. That brings TDUSC with up to 51 confirmed cars, with at least 5 others that don't have specific confirmed models. If you want the full list, I'll leave it in the description, but you should also totally not like, comment and subscribe. Thank you very much. This has been a lot of info, but hopefully you can see just how much effort Katie is putting into making this not just the best TDU, but hopefully the savior of what is a rather stale genre right now. Anyways, have a nice rest of the week, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Okay, that was
you were wondering what it was like to be part of my streams. This is what that